I know on one side you're saying, it was kind of like a rebirth, but how did you get back on your foot and like decided I want to start something else?
Hey, this was like an MBA that we all achieved without having to go into the MBA program. Credit a lot of the gumption or the desire to start that journey because of my experiences with the UBC Ski Club. Liftpasses.com was an awesome idea. Bad timing.
And for the real estate professor, like what kind of business model was it?
Well, that was actually kind of the unique thing because there really was no model back then.
Where are we going with AI?
So you're going to be seeing, these intelligent, contextually aware agents.
How did you got into that partnership and how did it all came about?
Once you've spread your wings, you understand the community, you're a big part of the community, which is a huge part of TTT. You start recognizing those who are exceptional at what they do and align yourselves with them because you know they can deliver.
How will you like speak to me as another company you would like to partner with?
I went to every single booth and said, look, I know 0. I hope you're going to fill me to a 1, okay, of out of 10 of knowledge. What do you do? I want to know. And then they tell you about what they want to do. And then they're asking, well, why are you here? What do you do? Tell them a bit about your services. And the more advanced you get, the more you have to listen more and more because projects get a lot more sophisticated and the partners get more sophisticated and they're going to recognize BS pretty quickly.
You know what? We have always been taught that 90% of startups fail. But have we ever asked ourselves why they don't teach us that 10% of the startups that do exist and see some success creates the 100% of jobs? Well, when I heard that statement from a very famous entrepreneur himself, all I could think of is how can I get one entrepreneur on my podcast to deliver value to the community? Lucky me, I found this gentleman named Chris Hobbs, who runs a very successful software development company here in Vancouver, BC. The name of the company is TTT Studios, and they have successfully done partnerships with firms like Bell, Unity, and KPMG itself. Well, little that I know that Chris's first venture ended up being a failure back in 99 and 2000 with the dot-com era getting busted. But then he mentioned the next opportunity came with Apple releasing its Play Store. But the one lesson that I took from this episode was that you can have a great idea, but if the timing is not correct, that idea is just gonna fail. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. You should try, you learn from it, and get better. Because it's certainly possible if Chris and his brother wouldn't have tried the first venture, they wouldn't have been here today. So with that said, let's go and listen to Chris Hobb and his journey to run a successful company. Where did this idea came from, starting your own brand, your company?
Well, I mean, it goes well beyond the founding of TTT Studios because it would actually come straight from, my experiences at UBC, where I actually started my entrepreneurial journey. And I actually, credit a lot of the gumption or the desire to start that journey because of my experiences with the UBC Ski Club. Or the Ski and Snowboard Club, where I was the president and learned a lot. I always joke, or it's kind of not a joke, unfortunately, but, I was the president, yet I hate snow and can't ski. But it was the right club to learn, not only, make friends for life, but also learn a lot. And it was quite interesting, actually, because the UBC Ski and Snowboard Club actually just had their 50th anniversary party 2 weeks ago. And I was really blessed to be part of that and to meet people from, not only the current students, but also past students who have had actually a similar entrepreneurial journey, who actually did credit it back to the club, which I thought was very, very interesting. So, it just showcases that you as a student should be exploring as much as you can, especially with student life, which I think clubs is a big part of. But really, my journey started from learning about that, and then during the .com years, opening up a company called liftpasses.com to kind of get in on that. Everyone is jumping on that internet craze, and then moving on that. Failing that startup, gained more knowledge than you could ever believe, and it was such a cool startup in the ski industry. But unfortunately, when the .com blow up happened, it was really hard to raise capital, and back then it was very expensive to do pretty much anything compared to now. I mean, now you've got the cloud, you've got all these technologies. If you're going to be on the tech side of the entrepreneurs, you can spin up instances so fast. Whereas before, I had to spend oh my gosh, $65,000 just on a database diagram that would take a day to do now. And that was multiple weeks of work to work through. And then, using Oracle and all these really cheap tools, which I do not recommend, the cloud solved a lot of that problem for you to not only be global, but also to be able to stand up a service or a product pretty quickly. Now, how did that get to TTT? That's a long way of ups and downs, and just the recognition that there is an opportunity where the iOS App Store had just opened up, and not many people were doing it. My brother and I, and the amazingly talented co-founder Josephine Wong, who's our design specialist. She's very special, I'll tell you that. But we recognized an opportunity, and we took it, and we rode the mobile, and and then we were lucky enough from mobile to recognize that that's actually just an extension of a service, or mobile itself is not as demanded for on its own, but it's actually kind of just a part of a larger project. And we were lucky to have pivoted to recognize that and create a team that does everything from AI to 3D with Unity today, so that we were able to offer a lot more services than we had originally intended and imagined 14 years into this journey of TTT Studios.
It's funny because I was reading about how much time it used to take to design a ER diagram, and you mentioned like
It's
so
insane.
expensive. So we'll go back a little bit. We want to know more about your first venture and how
Mhm.
was that?
Sure. Well, liftpasses.com was an awesome idea. Bad timing, again, due to the blow up. But basically what that was my brother, myself, and two fellows from Australia. We founded this company. One of them was the three of us, my brother, I, and this one Australian guy was all at UBC. And then the third fellow just came from Australia, who was a friend of the other one. But we founded a company that again, my big learning from the ski and snowboard club was that we sold a lot of tickets. Okay, so we learned how to sell a lot of tickets. Like I think we had about $35,000 as a nonprofit. We probably shouldn't have had money left over, but I think we were so successful at it because Whistler just started giving us this deal, and that we got, I think it was $10 per ticket that was sold, and believe me, we sold a lot of tickets, so that we had all this money left over. And I realized, hey, you know what? There's a real opportunity here. People are, getting online, and they want to do things and online. So what the company liftpasses.com did was to, just that. We wanted to sell lift passes through the internet, but the problem with doing it through the internet is obviously, it's you're risking a lot if you have it just mailed to you, because maybe you'll use that ticket, maybe you won't. There's no real value there. The price was the same. So what our value add was something that I still to this day think was pretty unique, especially in the timing, because again, this is pre-social media. This is instant messaging wasn't really a thing. You had text messaging, but unless you were in Europe, no one really seemed to know how to use that until the iPhone came out. But what the model was this, is that we had these hardened kiosks at the bottom of the mountain, and that you would go and go onto this kiosk, put in your username and password, and it would say, hey, Vash, did you know that Sarah and Bill are also on the mountain? Did you want to leave a message for them? And then we'd have these machines, these kiosks up at the top of the mountain that would be actually that social medium of like, hey, you know what? Let's meet up. It was a great idea. It was going well, but again, the collapse of being able to raise capital, because it was, again, very expensive to do, was very unfortunate, because in the dying days of that company, I remember the very, very last day, which was I'll tell you, as an entrepreneur, it's a relief to kill an idea and kill a company just as much as it's a stress to do so, because you recognize that, this is a chance to go on to my next, use the learnings to go on to my next one. But I was in London with one of the other co-founders who, unfortunately, we were having a bit of a challenging time at that point, mostly because of the market, but emotionally between the two, between the we'll call it the Canadian parties and the Australian parties. We're having real challenges getting through, and it's unfortunate because, again, I'm in London. We were talking to Gorilla Park, which is this large incubator who really wanted to put those technology into the soccer pitches all over Europe because they thought it would be so cool. But I think they also recognized that we were probably ready to to shut up shop. And I just remember the end of that venture of Andrew, the one fellow went one stairs and I went up the other to go down the SkyTrain, and or I guess it was the tube back there in London, and just thinking, you know what, I'm at peace with myself. Like, this is a great idea that's dead, and I'm gonna let it die, and I'm at peace. Like, and it was a really amazing thing. It's like a reverse birth in a way. Like, it's just like, you know what, I can give this up and feel good about myself that we tried.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I recently heard another entrepreneur on one of the podcasts mentioning like you can have a great idea, but if the timing is not right, it's probably not going to work out.
Right time, right place, luck, a lot of luck. That's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. I mean, there are conditions that are outside of you, and you have to recognize that. And I think that's probably what the peace part that I'm talking about is that when you finally do recognize that, hey, you kicked the can, you kicked it hard. You hurt your foot doing it, but at the same time, the can's been kicked. It's time to move on to that next one.
Cool. And this is the phase where I feel like general public or the society we get, we grew up, we are always scared of failures, and in startup world, it's a common term. And I heard the other day, like now VCs actually feel happy that you have failed. At least you did something.
It's all
Now,
learnings.
so I was very curious, like when that happened, like how did you, I know on one side you're saying, it was kind of like a rebirth, but how did you get back on your foot and like decided I want to start something else?
Well, mostly for necessity. I needed to keep going. You have to keep your velocity going. But I would say maybe a unique way, and I think this kind of separates, I'll call it founders from operators, is operators fear, and that's why they're operators instead of starting things. Like, they're great at making something happen. A vision, someone gives them a vision, they run with it. Fantastic, right? I think I sit in that pool of not caring. Like, honestly, I mean, I care, don't get me wrong, but I don't get too stressed out or afraid of that fear of failing. I always take them as super positive about, you know what, if it doesn't work, we just go do the next thing. We learn from it, and I would even say that was the one feedback I got from those fellows in Australia is the answer at the end when we said, hey, we're closing this down, and again, we weren't on great terms when we did so, was basically, hey, this was like an MBA that we all achieved without having to go into the MBA program. Like, we learned so much. So I say go for it. Especially if you're young, you can bounce back. Get your, especially UBC students, get your degree. Don't irritate mom and dad. I always say, especially the undergrad, get the undergrad. I have my daughter who is finally committed. She is going to UBC next year. I can't tell you how excited I am about that. I want her to have her undergrad guaranteed. If she drops out of graduate school, c'est la vie. That's the opportunity that you have to measure and take.
Yeah, I remember last time I met you, you said your daughter doesn't want to go to UBC.
She got into, University of Toronto, McGill, Queens, all the big ones. And then she just kind of, I guess she was stringing me on, because she knew that I wanted her so bad. But I mean, we're fourth generation of UBC, so why wouldn't we,
I mean, it's a great school.
It is a great school.
I think she should speak with someone who's traveling abroad and coming to UBC.
Yes. Oh, you know what? There's these she was showing me, there's like social media, I guess, on the Instagram of people who are coming to UBC that have committed. And she's already picked out the Americans going, yeah, I'm going to be friends with them. I want to be friends with people that are coming to the country. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I think great initiative. So tell me, like, between the first and the second one, did you take a break or you immediately started the next one?
Well, no. After the lift passes, I started. It's kind of a weird situation. I kind of ended up with a client down at Beverly Hills, who was had a real estate website, and I was just helping. My brother and I were helping him program his website, making sure it stays up, doing some of the SEO marketing, limited marketing at the time. I mean, this is 2000, 2001. And what the model of his offering or service was for people that wanted to get the real estate licenses in the States. What they could do is they could buy a CD off the website. So you'd mail the CD for that specific state to their website. Okay, interesting model. So we were building for him, and again, the tools back then were pretty weak. But he was being so successful that the back end was failing. So he contracted us to do a big project of it was about $35,000 that we had agreed to do this project, and so to rebuild the back end. But at that point, my brother and I, and this is my twin brother, so we're pretty close in terms of age and looks. But we had a little bit of extra time, and my brother started. Well, I'll give him full credit. It was more his vision. It started thinking, hey, what if we made an online delivery version of this, just out of pure interest, right? So kind of, 3/4, 4/5 it while we were building at the back end. And anyhow, and here's a big lesson to everyone. Big lesson. One big mistake we did is we did the back end. We put it into production, and the client then said, "Hey, great, I'll pay you $5,000." And we're like, "Well, that was months of work, probably two months worth of work for two people. 5,000 isn't what we agreed to." And we had an okay relationship with this fellow. He's just, unfortunately, he very successful because he's very cheap. I think these type of things end up burning you in the long run. So I don't recommend going that route. But people have their idiosyncrasies, I suppose. So we actually said, hey, we've got this version. And it was like the SaaS version of what he was offering before we even knew what SaaS was. Because again, this is 2000, 2001, right? So we said, hey, we have this version, we'll give it to you if you just pay us full, that, you can do online, and actually get instantaneous, because instead of having to mail a CD out, the party will be able to instantaneously study, which sounds like a good deal to me. And he didn't really understand the vision. And the guy was in his 80s. I'm not shocked he wouldn't understand the vision. But at the same time, he said, well, if you want to do that, why don't you do it and you can compete against me instead? Because I guess he didn't think it was a real thing. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll do that. And the license professor was born. And, that one was we did really, really well on the SEO. We got the word real estate. I think we were number 7 in the States. We did a really good job at SEO. It was a lot easier back then. And so, we were making significant sales, multi-$1,000 sales every day. And we're selling a virtual product. So it's a great business, I'll tell you, because you're selling nothing, because you're selling a education that is 100% scalable. And so at that point, we had a relatively good business that required very little of our work, short of the marketing. And to this day, it is still going. So it's been going for about 23 years now. It doesn't, and I guess that's where the transition goes for, from going from that company to TTT Studios, because what I was doing at the time is my wife's a tour guide. So, and I just had 2 kids at that point, very young. So we were traveling for 6 months. We'd go to South America or Africa, or, we just go see the world. And the other 6 months, my wife would do her job and I'd be with the kids. And, again, the license professor didn't really require a lot of work. And then that 2008 crisis happened in the States, where it's a housing crisis, so not as many people were getting the real estate licenses. But as they say, with Christitude, at that same time, as there was a slow burn of less people getting the real estate licenses, there's also this thing called the App Store that opened up when the iPhone came out. And we thought that was really interesting. So we tried to do the iOS version of the License Professor, thinking there might be a market here, and found that because it was just so new, any of the iOS programming at that time was just so brand new that no one. You go on the internet, everyone was having the same bugs. Everyone was having, but no one had solutions for it. So my brother and I went down to I guess you call it a boot camp down in Seattle, which was for iOS, we're thinking that we'd be able to get some bugs solved in this group thought, but we didn't find, for the very expensive boot camp, didn't really find that we got much value out of it. But my brother did get a call the next week from the instructor who said, "Hey, can you go teach the boot camp in Ohio?" So that made us think, okay, I guess we're better at this than we think, because we were with some great people there, but they clearly identified, the talent that especially my brother has. So we realized, hey, this is kind of unique and this is interesting. And, my daughter also was just about to start kindergarten. So I'm going to be stuck in Vancouver now, not being able to do the tours. So we thought, well, maybe other people are having these problems too. Why don't we open up a company that focuses on native mobile experiences? And I was really lucky to have worked a contract at one point when one of those summers, because I was trying to get the heck out of the house when I could. And that's where I met Josephine, who was honestly one of the most talented people you'll ever meet. And I instantly knew, hey, and one that I trusted after being burnt by other business people that, I want to work with, more than just my brother. I can trust her 100%. And that's when TTT Studios, or at least it used to be called Too Tall Totems, was founded out of that 14 years ago. And, ever since, we've just been building and building and having a lot of fun.
And the third co-founder is also a UBC alum.
She is, and our CEO is also, actually, our CEO is fantastic human being, I gotta say. He was our first MBA intern, so he was a UBC MBA, and originally from Mexico City, he just blew us away, and then after. Well, once you start understanding Jose, I mean, he was a lawyer back in Mexico. He's just a great human being. Once you start recognizing him, it's like, yeah, you know what? You're the strategic mind behind this. You are the person that should be taking up the mantle, and it was a really good decision to make him CEO.
Awesome. And for the real estate professor, what kind of business model was it? Like as a subscription based?
Yeah, well, that was actually kind of the unique thing, because there really was no model back then. And we came up with something that was super unique. And I think this is why it was successful, because, other people had tried to do the model where it was like, yeah, you just buy a membership and you haven't, reciprocity, like forever, basically, right? And we were afraid because, people who become realtors, it might also be lawyers, was in our mind. And it just, should we shut this down? We didn't want to get sued. So what we did is came up with you buy a membership. Okay, so say $59, you get the membership to the system, and then you buy time with that membership. So it's 90 days, 180 days, or 365. And that's only like another $10 or $15 or $20 more based on that. But then you also got, a lot of people that were renewing. Which was good too. So this SaaS thing was fantastic. Again, we didn't really understand it back then. We were just building what felt natural. And it's a blessing. I mean, I want to say again, we recognized the internet, craze, the .com, jumped on that one. We recognized SaaS before we even knew it was SaaS, jumped on that one. Mobile, we jumped on the bottom of that one. And now we are kicking and screaming through the world of AI right now. And I'm super excited about what we're going to do through that.
No, that I do have a question regarding AI. But before that,
Mm-hmm.
you also mentioned like you were already doing SEO in 2001 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question would be like, I feel like, SEO is something we recently became really popular. So was there another word for it and you used to do it, or how did it?
No, it's always been SEO or SEM. There's the paid for and the non-paid for. It's just the organic. You can't get away with the organic techniques that you did back then. They were pretty basic. You just wait for the Google. I mean, again, this is, oh my gosh. I mean, Google was just coming out basically then. So I mean, you relied on the spiders coming and spidering you. And I remember we would watch the spiders come and cheers and, and you could really manipulate back then. You can't now. The algorithms are pretty advanced.
And I also like coming to now AI. I also like surf through your website a lot, and there's a big part of AI on the website. So I'm really curious to know like where are we going with AI, where we see like automation going, replacing jobs a lot, and where would humans play a part?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously that's above my above my professional guidelines, but I can give you some what my thoughts are. First off, I think we're in such an early stage of it that there isn't even really a killer app. Like people really, I mean, you could say Chat GPT or any of the chat apps are that killer app, but I think what that is just the awakening, to be honest. And I think what you're going to start seeing was the next round, which is going to be agent based. So you're going to be seeing these intelligent, contextually aware agents. That are actually going to be tracking the information or the activities that will get it done until without you just say go and do it and it'll return that. But the thing about the jobs that you say is, yeah, I think there's going to be a bit more of a shock than people say. Because I mean, I'm looking at some of the robots that are being released right now, and I think those things are going to hit the market much faster, like much faster than people think. And for the cost of a car, you can have a robot that makes you dinner. It takes, well, I question still, it's actually an a spiritual debate we were having at the office is, would you let your dog a robot walk your dog? I'm not so sure. In the same way I wouldn't want a little kid to do it, because if the dog gets away, I'm not sure it's coming back to robot. I mean, maybe he'll have a treat or something like that. But I do think the robots, intelligent, contextually aware, is going to be a solved problem pretty soon, at least in a basic form. And again, for the cost of a car, you're going to have someone in your house that's going to be doing a lot of the stuff that you don't want to do.
Like going a little bit more deeper into it. I was thinking of this problem. Everything in this world related to technology is designed to solve a particular problem.
Mm-hmm.
From a company's perspective, what do you think when designing robots was the biggest problem they were trying to solve?
Well, I mean, I think most robots that you can recognize. I mean, if you watch the Jetsons back in the '60s, I was born in the '70s, but I still watched the Jetsons. You recognize the ability to have a 24-hour always on assistant, which would be fantastic, right? But I think right now they're mostly just science experiments. But you need to have the chat GPTs of this world to really kind of give it, again, contextually awareness, or being context aware, so that they're not just breaking things and hitting things, and so they actually understand the environment around them. And that part was missing. So, I mean, you had people building out robots, and I mean, it was actually interesting because I was looking at Sanctuary, which is a great company here in Vancouver with their Phoenix robot, and we have the KPMG. We're in KPMG's building, we're the 12th floor, but across what the shares a floor with this is what's called their ignition center, and it's kind of a imagine it, we could build it sort of thing. And they actually had one of the first generation versions of Sanctuary AI's robots. And you look at it, it looks superhuman. Like it's got red hair. It's like one of the founders. And you're like, that's interesting. And now you look at, the Phoenix robot, and that thing looks like almost exactly like the robot from the Jetsons. And it makes me wonder, do people want to see humans in it? Or do they want to have a robot and recognize that that is a functioning, I don't want to call it servant. I guess it kind of is a servant, without the human context around that. So, I mean, it's a science experiment until it's not.
Understood. And where is like TTT Studio coming from AI's perspective? What products or services you are delivering for AI?
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now we're working on some internal ones that actually, one of them is to dog food our own work. It's actually to help us be faster through our own processes so that we can be even more competitive, and automate a lot of our own services, especially around the UX design and research side of things, which I think is perfect right now for AI. But we don't tend to do the machine learning side. What we tend to do is we'll do the LLM integration side. So think of us more as using it and creating AI enabled tools or applications, is really the difference. So we have partners that if you say, hey, we want to use our data and do this or that, we usually will talk to one of our partners to do that, and then we'll wrap it with the application that's required, from the model that they produce.
Coming to partners, I saw like you had a partnership with Unity and Bell Flights, and you actually designed the final stages of the product they had. How did you got into that partnership, and how did it all came about?
Well, here's a UBC story. This is fantastic. Is the founders of a wonderful company called Finger Foods, which was they became a company right around the same time as Two Tall Totems, early days of mobile, and they were focusing. I mean, Finger Foods, you can get it, the finger, and they were focusing mostly on mobile games. But I went to UBC with two of their founders, and they're great. Big, I was always frenemies with this company, and they got acquired just around the time of COVID. They got acquired by Unity. And, and we'd gone back and forth. I mean, we'd done a project or two together before they became Unity, and we were always like, just big fans of what they did. And I feel there was some reciprocation there, or at least I know there was. So the reality of that relationship is when they became Unity, they needed to scale. And so their services division, which unfortunately was just sold to Capgemini, but this is what happens in the enterprises and the executive world is that packages get sold off. But we were partners with them and we're still partners with Unity to help work on. We don't really do the video games, but it's more the digital twinning and the problem set. So the application that you're talking about with Bell, we did that along with Unity. Was that Bell helicopters? The problem they were trying to, or the application they're trying to do, was to showcase in a very visual way, which a Unity software is, which is a physics engine, almost like a video game or a movie engine, is perfect for, is to showcase how far you could. For a helicopter, say, hey, I need to go from Vancouver to Seattle. Okay, this is the helicopter you need, and this is the virtualization of that travel. So it would help them with their sales, is that you could put in information and then it would output what was the best helicopter for you, and then do a little, 360 virtual shot of it, which was, I think, a great sales tool. The Bell really enjoyed it.
Very interesting. So basically, you kind of got that deal through a mutual friend and some people you
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah, and trusted. That's the important thing. New and trusted. They and respected. And we do a lot of our. We are not going to do everything. So we actually have quite a few partners here in Vancouver that are business adjacent to us. So we're not going to do marketing, but we do have a marketing partner. We're not going to do hardware, but we do have a hardware partner. So that if someone comes to us and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, we're like, great, you know what? We can do X, but Y and Z is going to be done by our partner, and we're going to be very open about it. But we only align ourselves with the best. That's the important thing, is that if you're going to do it, make sure that you know that they're going to do good work, because anyone that you recommend is going to come, it's going to come back to you. And this is why traditionally we hadn't really done it. I mean, I always had a lot of these companies, especially from, Southeast Asia or anything that could be cheaper, saying, hey, any project that that you say no to because it just doesn't make sense financially for you, send it to us. Well, that sounds like a great idea. And we've never done this, but I can tell you what's actually would happen is if they drop the ball, that company or group or whatever is going to come back to me and say, hey, you fix this. You're the one that suggested them. And so it's not really in our interest to have a partnership under that sort of light. But once you've spread your wings, you understand the community, you're a big part of the community, which is a huge part of TTT. You start recognizing those who are exceptional at what they do and align yourselves with them, because they can deliver. And then if they can deliver, I don't make money by sending projects to them, but they win and they're a partner. And you know what? They send projects our way. It's a win-win. It's a really good model.
I think it's very relatable in the sense you on one side you are working to be the best in your industry, but you're also like getting along or networking with the companies who are best in their industries as well. And when you
Mm-hmm.
getting a client, you're also providing business to them, which
Mm-hmm.
works both ways.
It's a win-win.
So how, for someone who's starting up, like how can they connect with somebody and network who are like-minded and just want to, of course,
Mm.
in the beginning, they're not going to find the best, but
Well,
still
it's
you.
tough. It's tough. I mean, maybe we'll find the best because, talent is recognized. But in order to do that, what I recommend you do, especially to start off, go to as many meetups as you can that are, in the industry. Or even that aren't, because sometimes if like, for example, for our services, I don't really want to be in the tech, all the tech meetups, because the tech people don't need our services. I'd rather go to mining ones. Well, not rather, but often will benefit better from mining ones to go and meet people. But if you're doing it in order to get community acceptance, we'll call it, like respect, and to be part of the community where people do recognize you. Go to as many meetups as you can, and once you're ready, speak at as many meetups as you can. But be ready and provide the best content you possibly can, and be open and ready to share. It's a
And
tight community in Vancouver. It's one that I value hugely, because it isn't like San Francisco where there's a million people that need multi-$100 million deals. It just doesn't work in Vancouver at that scale. We need to take care of each other. And, if you can align yourself, just like how the airlines align with all the, what they see as their premium partners, and then they can maximize their seats. Well, we can maximize revenues together that way in a very similar way.
very interesting. Speaking about meetups and networking events, and I also know that you go to a lot of conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just presenting a case. Let's say I'm one of the companies that are presenting on a meetup where you are attending, and you're coming to that event. How will you like speak to me as another company you would like to partner with or present your products or services?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different angles here, right? Like, what's the mission? Like, for example, I went to an oil and gas conference in Alberta relatively recently. I know very little about oil and gas, and I'm not going to be the person that goes in there and says I'm an expert of it. So I went to every single booth and said, "Look, I know zero. I hope you're going to fill me to a one, okay, of out of 10 of knowledge. What do you do? I want to know." And then they tell you about what they want to do. And then they're asking, "Well, why are you here? What do you do?" Tell them a bit about your services. Don't always market it. Don't say you need us, da 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 da, because they probably don't. But at one point they might. And so for me, it's all about just being open and listen. I mean, the listening is the biggest part, especially you and the more advanced you get, the more you have to listen more and more, because projects get a lot more sophisticated and the partners get more sophisticated, and they're going to recognize BS pretty quickly. So you have to be at your best when doing it. But no one ever faults you for saying, "Hey, I don't know. I just want to listen." No one ever faults you for that.
Very interesting. And you are like in much ahead in journey. So I was very curious, like even after meeting someone on the meetups and conference, do you still ask for their LinkedIn, and do you still
Always.
follow up with them after on?
Always, always. Any connection is a good connection, and if it means, you have some questions about careers, great. I'm happy to help you. I've been in the league, in this industry a long time. For me, it's being part of the community is paramount to growing in the community.
Got it. And just to wrap things off, what's your opinion about the startup culture in Canada?
It's improving. It's very much improving. I think you really need to be a part of it. I mean, in the early days, I'll say pre 2008, you had no choice, but you had to go down to the States. And the culture is very different in the States than it is here. It's a lot more competitive, a lot less tax programs to help you with your hiring and all of these things. But there's also a lot more capital. But as we've had, it's all a trickle down, right? As we've had more exits from those people in 2008 prior who went down to the States and they got exits and they brought it back here. And as there's more and more exits, the money gets shared. Because they all of a sudden become angel investors or start a fund, because people think, oh, you made $100 million off selling your software package or whatever, right? Well, that doesn't mean $100 million goes in your pocket. I mean, there's all these tax haven tricks that you do where it actually kind of just sits in a company. And you're better off to start investing that money to make it work, because if you just put it in your pocket, you get taxed like you will not believe. So there's no real value in doing that. So what you want to do is always have a holding company or a tax or a family family company that basically will be able to allow you to do those investments.
So will you also say like there's more angel investors here in Canada now than 2008? That's why they're
Yes.
able to take more
Oh yeah.
risk.
Risk is an interesting way of saying it. I'd say they've become a lot more sophisticated. So they understand the game a little bit better, and that makes them less risk averse. Because I mean, I always grew up hearing about, oh, I can do business in the States or in Asia where they're less risk averse. You get like $1 million deal done on a handshake, whereas here that'll take 6 months. I think that people have learned from Asia and America that, if you want to do business, that, that fear has to be removed. But when you also have more capital to spread around, that fear becomes less stuck to one company or one activity of investment.
Understood. I asked this question because I heard uh, on your podcast some of the guests mentioning like the reason why more startups come from America is because more people take risk over there,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're just grown up that way to take more risk.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think about when a lot of companies complain about some of the tax credit programs that we have in Canada, says it makes you fat and lazy or whatever. Like you're getting you're not being you're not taking your A game because you have this comfort in this pillow that allows you to do it. But in the States, they don't have that comfort in pillow, so they have to be at the most efficient they can possibly be. With that said, they have capital beyond anyone else. So it gives them an unfair advantage. Whereas, yeah, you know what, we might have extra layers of comfort because the government sees the opportunity as a hiring thing, which they return in tax dollars, which I think from a macroeconomic perspective does make a lot of sense. But because for example, if we ever had to lay off someone or anything like that, it doesn't make sense for us to do it because we have programs where we can say, okay, you know what, we'll just do an internal project, and that tax credit that we do, or the search and or the research and development, can pay itself off. So that allows us to keep the employee and everything. That's great. But at the same time, maybe we would have been better American style, where we just say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, that's life. We need to we need to keep lean so that we can keep going. That's a trade-off.
Very interesting perspective. Didn't know any of
Mm,
those. It's just I feel like you're being so transparent, and I'm getting to learn the inside of company. So very,
mm.
I'm really appreciative of that. Well,
Oh, it's my pleasure.
my last question would be, what are the three things that are most crucial for aspiring entrepreneurs you would like to share?
Well, first off, especially if you're young, just go for it. Just go for it. But when you do go for it, go 100% in. Like, for example, when I did the licensed professor, lift passes, the first company from BBC, I was also working as a lifeguard, which was a great, safe job. I had to quit because if I didn't quit, I feel like I would have just fallen back to that nice, safe job. So even though it wasn't a full-time job for me, I had to quit in order to focus on the startup. And I think you really need to think that way, that you're 100% in. You're not half butting it at all. Okay, that's really important. The other thing is you can't do everything yourself. Well, I mean, actually, some of the tech nowadays, it is possible. But if you're going to find a business partner, find someone who's complementary, not the same. I mean, it's way too simple to say, hey, you're an engineer and I'm an engineer. Let's build it together. That's great. But then you need a third party. Okay. And that third party's got to be the business person. Like that's completely, incredibly important. And then let me see what we got. We got the take the risk, burn the ships. We got the find complementary people. And here's a simple one: don't burn anyone. Like, if you're not into it, just say you're not into it anymore. But don't do dubious things, because there are parties that I have done business with that are clearly doing dubious things, and I have zero interest in working with them because I want to create value. It's not about the money, it's about the value. And I think if you have the same kind of spiritual intent, align yourselves with that. Do not burn people for a dollar. It is way too small a town, and people will know that that's what you're doing and will not trust you again.
Very inspiring. So how many co-founders will you say is good for a startup company?
Oh, I wouldn't go past four. It's three is good, two is great. I know a couple of startups that were like 8 people. That's great, and they had an exit, but that exit was not that big at the end of the day because you have to divide it between so many parties plus the investors. I mean, you have to be thinking about how do you keep your own interests aligned and your co-founder's interests aligned. And if there's too many people that have their fingers in the pie at the early day, well, there's not much pie to go out. So you really do have to think about what is it that you're going to do? What am I going to do? And make sure you have that contract, between the two, three, four of you. But I wouldn't go too much bigger unless you think your idea is so big, it's going to be fine.
And do you believe in the saying like for a startup to succeed, there should be a builder, operations guy, and a marketer? Do
Sure.
you?
Yeah. I mean, there you need to have sales. You need to have someone who builds. And I mean, yeah, operations is always good. I would actually go with the operations last of those, to be honest, because I think between the three of you, you're going to be wearing so many hats that operations is going to be natural. Like it's going to be part of the game anyhow. I mean, I had one rule with my brother, which worked really, really well. Maybe it's a twin thing. Maybe I had my mom, or we had our mom who could break up any feuds should we have any. But the one rule we had was that if say we both get an email asking a question, like, oh, we'll go with the licensed professor, we get an email and it's about, hey, I signed up for the wrong state. Can you fix it for me? Great. We didn't assign a job saying, oh, that's your job, you need to do it. Instead, what we did is whoever sees it first does it. And if you feel like the other person's not doing it, say, hey, dude, I keep doing it. You got to do it too. We never really ran into that because we honestly believed in that philosophy of whoever sees it first does it. And it just evened out. I think it's incredibly important, especially in the early days, because if you feel like one person's doing way more work than the other, it's going to come out in conversations or just in unhappiness if that person's not able to communicate it. So you really do have to figure out if there's a balance in what you're doing, and then the equity should be kind of shared accordingly.
And when it came to sales, who did the sales part?
C'est moi.
So were you like, bouncing off duties between sales and doing the tech part as well?
Yeah, well, I wasn't doing as much of the engineering at that point. When we kind of got a couple of sales, my brother was doing it. I mean, I was doing some of the coding, but we could hire people that were so much better than me at it that it just made sense. So no, I was mostly doing sales, and sales aren't like what you think, where you open up a phone book and you hey, who needs a website? Well, that one's easy because most people do, but hey, do you need a mobile app? No, most people don't. So really, it was all about just being out in the community and talking to as many people as I could so that they knew we were experts. And again, it's not about, hey, you should hire me. It's about, hey, how can I help you solve a problem that you might have with your iPhone so that you can see that I'm an expert? I'd be happy to share that knowledge with you. It's free, and that's how it's not as fast a growth because it's still finding product market fit, though it's a service. But you still had to kind of, take your licks and just be ready to offer your knowledge to prove that you are ready and willing to take on projects that are going to be a sophisticated size.
So where would you get access of those people who will in need of your products?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. What I did, I call it my 3 cups of chai philosophy, because I mean the other problem I had was I wasn't really leaving the house much when I had the real estate, the licensed professor, because there's heck, all our clients were in the States. So there was and it's just me and the kids hanging out with my brother and the dogs. That was pretty much about it. And so I didn't really have a network. So what I did is I kind of made up a story where I would say, hey, you know what? I want to take you out for chai. I hate coffee, so I always said chai, because I want to meet 3 people every week. Like every week, my mission is to meet 3 people that just might be interested in the technology. And then, I'd go and have chai. We talk, never sales again. I would talk about, this is a mission. This is the interesting stuff. Oh, you should update because X, Y, and Z security concern, that sort of thing. But at the end of the story, or at the end of our chat, I would always say, hey, you know what rules I set up for myself. I need to meet 3 people a week. I can't do it without your help. Introduce me to 3 people. And that built out my network of trust, was because people would like, yeah, he didn't sell to me. He was actually really helpful. And hey, you know what? My cousin, he's thinking about building an app that I should introduce them. Or hey, this company, maybe they're not doing it right now, but I think it could be something of interest. And that's how we met a bunch of partners and, companies that were doing websites but never couldn't do mobile apps, or advertising firms. And we ended up just becoming their mobile development wing, which is good and bad, because back then, we couldn't talk about the projects we were doing as if they were our own, because we were doing it white label on behalf of the client, or the client to us was the company that was contracted by the actual client. And so it was really difficult for us to get work from B2C, because any of the ad firms who, yeah, I say, oh, I can't tell you because I'm working with this ad firm, they knew right away, like, oh yeah, that's awesome, you're not talking about it, we can work with you. But when you're like, yeah, we did stuff, but I can't really tell you about what we did, that got a little bit tricky. So we actually had to build a bunch of our own internal apps just to showcase what we could do as well, so that we could get more of the B2C side of things.
Very interesting. Well, Chris, it was a pleasure. So, how did you find the episode? Well, what I'm really curious about is knowing your opinion. What is one thing that you learned from this episode? I shared mine in the beginning, but please share yours in the comment section below. And please like and subscribe, it really does support and helps, and is a big encouragement to keep going and invite more guests like Chris on the show. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.